when I was 12, my parents took me to meet a British-born NASA-trained astronaut. And I went to meet this astronaut in a village hall in the middle of Somerset. That's where I grew up. And it was a really, really amazing experience to have that. More the fact that it was in a village hall in the middle of Somerset in the early 80s. And I remember going into this hall, and there were lots of other people there. And I remember seeing this astronaut's paraphernalia. He had brought some, bits of space stuff, and his blue jumpsuit was there with all of his badges all over it. And, okay, it's fair to say I didn't become an astronaut, but that moment when I just listened to him, and I don't even remember what he said, but it was that experience of meeting somebody who had completely different ideas and had been exposed to different ideas that absolutely changed my world. It enabled me to realize that I was part of something far bigger and far more inclusive than I'd ever realized. It was bigger than my home life and my school life, and it meant that I actually had a part in it, because I could actually think, well, if they've had great ideas, if they've had these ideas, why can't I? If we can think about having the idea of putting somebody into space, why can't other ideas just come up? So it was a sudden realization for me, and it was the most profound realization. That's something that I've carried with me all my life. And it ignited something in me simply to just be able to explore ideas. And I did it because I could. Now, fast forward 3-ish decades, and we've all got access to ideas every single day, all the time. We just have to pick up these, and we're there. But it's actually almost overwhelming with all of these ideas. And I actually think that we're missing the point with all of these ideas that are actually being blasted around all the time and shared. I think that we're missing the point because we're failing to stand back and spend time to contemplate and think about ideas just for ideas' sake. And we don't do it in our workplace. We certainly don't do it in our education. And I want to know where's the space and freedom come to contemplate those ideas and create new ideas, just for the sake of having them. Why do ideas always have to come out with a production? Or why do they have to produce something in the end? Why can't the act of having an idea or coming up with the creative process of having an idea, why can't that be just as important as a potential outcome? And increasingly, why do these specific outcomes to ideas have to have some kind of commodification attached to them? I'm talking, about a fiscal attachment, or there has to be an outcome, or what are you going to do with it? Why can't they just be created and exist for the sake of it? So what do I mean by the commodification of ideas? Well, broadly speaking, as I've just mentioned, I think that the commodification of ideas is where we are somehow focused on attaching a fiscal, and you can interpret that in different ways, a fiscal value to an idea, rather than having the idea per se. And I think that having that concept of having that drive to commodify ideas actually means we're missing out on so many more important things. Because we're restricting ourselves from having the time to create the creative process of creating ideas, because we are so process-driven. One of my favorite quotes about ideas is by Albert Einstein. And he said, "If at first an idea is not absurd, then there is no hope for it. If at first an idea is not absurd, then there is no hope for it." So can you imagine taking that kind of mindset into a school or into a workplace? These institutions, and we all occupy them, they're too structured and too siloed. They are too process-driven. They're increasingly, it's data, algorithms, spreadsheets, outcomes that actually have a far narrow view than the idea itself. And you might say, fair enough, that's the purpose of them. Education has to have outcomes. Businesses have to have outcomes. But I think that in restricting it that much, we're missing really important things. And I think there are two key influences in how this has come about. Now, the first is our focus on fact-based education. We have increasingly in our education system less time to explore, consider, encourage, and encourage the development of ideas for ideas' sake, and therefore create a space for creativity for ideas. And here in the UK, we have an increasingly ranked-focused education system. What's more, you could even suggest that our education system fails to even recognise the importance of learning itself. And yet the modern pupil has a hugely varied cultural landscape. And they're ripe for empowering the notion of encouraging absurd ideas. And lowbrow interests shouldn't be scoffed at. Their ideas, absurd or other, matter. And ironically, I actually think this is a risk to our economy, because the way we work is shifting. We don't have jobs for life anymore, and we increasingly need to build a workforce that can be creative in the way they work. And this is critical for young people today, because they're going to be writing their own job descriptions in years to come. It's happening now. So if we don't nurture a generation and future generations that can pursue ideas, that can turn ideas into the value of questioning and exploring, I actually think we're going to be in trouble. Because by the time kids hit the age of 14 or 15 years old, they get to GCSE level, and they're then in the world of exams and league tables. Now, education secretaries have probably got one view on things, but I genuinely believe that this is a big risk, and we need to start looking at things in a very different way, because the world is a very different place. And here's the kicker, that if we empower young people to create ideas and to have that space just to have those absurd ideas, just to question them, they don't have to end up doing something. But actually, we're creating a strong foundation in so many other things. So it's things like collaboration and problem solving and coming up with creative solutions to challenges, and also understanding how to manage failure. It's about self-assurance, self-worth, self-value, understanding and tolerance. And I think they are just as important as league tables. And the second contributing factor, I think, it's pretty obvious to me. The cost of accessing ideas and being part of the ideas makers, with those idea makers, is actually prohibitive. In business, in education, in technology, in politics, from Davos to the tech conferences that I go to, I just see the same faces. I see the same ideas. And I see the same clubs. And I know that we see that in every walk of life. And you might say, so what? I can get this stuff on the internet. I can download it. I can participate. I've got my phone. I can do all of that. It's all there to be accessed. Yeah, that's true. But sometimes these things are put behind paywalls. And I'm not just talking about financial paywalls. I'm talking about socio-economic paywalls. I'm talking about confidence paywalls. I'm talking about self-esteem. I'm talking about being encouraged to be able to participate in the first place. Confidence. And also, if you're one of the 21% of Britain's adult population that do not possess the digital skills to even make the most of what's online, then you're already excluded. And what's more, if you're one of the 10 million adults in the UK who don't even have access to online, you are immediately prohibited there. And what if you're one of those kids in the family that doesn't have online? So our push to put everything online and to have that as our pivotal place is actually creating an elite. So back to Einstein's kind of like absurd ideas. So here's a really, really absurd idea that came about by accident. It was by an Australian guy in Afghanistan. And he was skateboarding, as you do. I think he was traveling. He was skateboarding in Kabul in 2007. And he realized that people were coming to him and were really fascinated by his skateboard. And long story short, he set up Skatistan in 2007. It was a grassroots project that now grown into an NGO. And what he wanted to do was he realized by using his skateboard as a hook, he could actually empower young people to come and get an education. So he used that as a hook to actually enable them to have educational and personal empowerment. So they were getting taught, and they were having the skateboarding as a reward. But why skateboarding? Well, because in Afghanistan, many girls aren't allowed to ride bikes, but they are allowed to ride a skateboard. And around 300 girls attend educational activities 3 times a week, and they're getting empowerment, they're getting social capital, they're learning how to lead, they're getting self-worth, all around a really, really absurd idea. It's pretty bonkers if you think about it. But it's an idea that's changing the lives of many, many people in Afghanistan, and this project is now being pushed out to Africa and Cambodia. So when I look back at my 60 minutes that I don't really remember with the British-born NASA-trained astronaut, some 30-ish years ago, I'm still inspired by that moment. I think we need to be encouraging young people to have those moments themselves, that they can tap into and carry with them for the rest of their lives. I'm excited and inspired by the possibility of ideas just for the sake of having ideas. And I'd really like to see us try within our workspaces, within our education system, within our politics, and within our technology areas to try and open it up too. We need to curb our enthusiasm and appetite to profit from ideas. And we need to celebrate them, encourage them just because they can exist. This means a shift in our mindset. We've got to stop obsessing with the bottom line. We've got to stop obsessing with facts and with data. We've just got to find that space to tap into our creativity as human beings again. And we should also challenge, this is obvious, we should also challenge why access to information and thought leaders and ideas is so restricted. It's because we have socio-economic barriers all the way. And we have to insist in participation and engagement. But crucially, I'd say this to everyone here: don't dismiss your absurd ideas, because actually you've got Einstein on your side. And you might not change the world, but you could change your world. Thank you very much.